your freshmen, I can understand some of the mistakes at times. And, you know, when you're older, you know, the bar's a little harder or higher, that, you know, I expect our upperclassmen to, you know, be able to kind of toe that line a little better. So that, they got their shot, and I thought they answered really beautifully.
I know it's a team that from the start of the season, they seem to have a lot of fun, really enjoy
Yeah.
each other, really fun-loving group. Has it been difficult at all with these last 3 losses, especially to keep that mentality alive?
Yeah.
You have to really make sure that they're focused on still having fun, having a positive energy in the locker room?
Yeah, I think, I mean, anybody, like, when you lose, it's not fun, right? It's not nearly as lighthearted. It's not nearly as, I mean, it's just like if you have do a couple bad stories, right? Or you have to start it over. I mean, you're mad at yourself, you're disappointed. But man, when you get your shot and your question is great, the response is great, you know, it's just like, that's just exactly what happens in the locker room. And the difficult part is what I've been that's what I've worked on, because we're predominantly young. They haven't been there. So they can all of a sudden think, oh man, maybe we aren't that good. It's just keeping them steady and understanding that adversity is really a part of it if you handle it well. And that's the $1 million question. I think our leadership has to handle it well and know that it isn't fun, but we can still play with joy, we can still play hard, and as long as we keep trying to go through, I think that we will be just fine. But so as a coach, you kind of balance. I'll give you an example. After the Illinois game, I was very hot and disappointed with their play. What I saw there, I just saw a little flatness for the first time. I felt like we didn't really see some moments. So the next day at practice, we had a different discussion. After Indiana, I mean, they really did battle. We closed gaps a couple of times. We just didn't turn a corner. But I saw a different type of feel. And so that's where, you know, managing that. The Illinois performance, I thought, was much more disappointing. Just that in the end of it, we just missed so many. Our upperclassmen, young, everybody didn't take what the huddle and go out there, right, because of the pressure. So it was easier after Indiana to keep that lightness, because I love what I saw. I mean, you guys, Garzone, Chloe, and Sydney, they have been there. They've been there. They acted like they've been there. No excuse. We could have won, but it's different. And so I had to keep that in mind. The people I was playing at the end against that, who they took South Carolina in the Sweet 16 as close as anybody took South Carolina. And I watched that game and I was like, holy buckets. I was really, you know, happy for them back then. I thought they could have done it. So it's just a little bit of you gotta take the little wins as a coach with the youth. And I thought they won a lot of things against a really vet team. But I think Indiana, they were great. They came into a hot environment, and they started not so great, and they've started to figure it out. So I got to figure it out again.
Coach Stamp mentioned last month that Aaliyah was pretty nervous going into the Washington State game.
Mm-hmm.
I asked her just now if she was nervous going into her first start. She said she was surprised she wasn't more nervous, and that she's been pretty confident since getting into action. How does that confidence strike you?
You know, I love Aaliyah, and that's why she got it there, because it was a smaller lineup, and trying to kind of play to the different lineups at times, or just seeing if that would have really sparked us. And we did have a better start. It was kind of our middle that we didn't handle as well. But Aaliyah, I really love how Aaliyah plays. I like her mentality. I love her approach, and she just didn't shoot as well that game, and she had a couple freshman moments, but I don't worry about Aaliyah. She's rock steady, and as long as when she just keeps getting more minutes and experience, I'm very confident in her leading our team, and I'm really excited about what she's going to bring at key minutes the rest of this year. But moving in with all what I'm seeing now with who we have coming in, I'm very thankful we have Aaliyah at that spot.
From your perspective, how pivotal is this next 3-game stretch? With Nebraska and 2 games.
I think if you don't want to be white knuckled, at the end of it and putting a lot more pressure, on every other game after that, I do think it's pivotal. Do I think it's back against the wall for tomorrow night? I don't. What I want to see tomorrow night is us kind of playing with that rhythm a little bit more consistency of kind of the free flowing. And I think if we do that, we'll put ourselves in a better position to actually, win the game. But I'm not quite ready to say, like, man, if, we don't win, at least 2 out of 3, it's all over. I think more so I need us to start playing consistently how I know we can play to give us a really good chance to win a back and forth where you don't get down 14-16 and then come on back and then you're putting a lot of weight on a last minute 3 that has to go. We had 2 great looks at Illinois. Here, we were down with 4 with a minute, I can't remember exactly, but there were opportunities, but you work so hard. So I do think, yes, I think it's, if we kind of want to put ourselves back into a comfortable stretch heading into the end of, wanting to be in the middle to upper of that Big Ten conference, I think it is pivotal. But, I don't know if it's a must-have, gotta-have. I think it just helps us be more comfortable. Maybe you can play freer. But I think the first step I'd like to take before having to win them is I just want this group, the kids that I'm starting to play a little bit more together, they start getting a little seasoning. And if we get seasoning, then I think we can turn it.
Obviously, Nebraska just had a pretty major injury, but what did Husker show you on Scout?
Yeah, I feel badly. She's such a great player, and Nebraska is having such a nice season. But they've, they're really good. They got Markowski. Every one of them can shoot it. And Britt Prince, we try to recruit the heck out of her. She's from Omaha, and she's, there's a lot of good freshmen in this league. But ones that are starting, they get the nod for freshman of the year. But they all shoot the 3. Britt was shooting at about 40% in regular season. She's a little lower now, but I don't suspect that would stay. They're all, pushing 40%. So they got a lot of weapons. They do a lot in their secondary break. They defend really solidly. So they're, I know that hurts their depth. Allison was a really good player, and I feel badly for her on that. But they just pose a really, they're my kind of team. They got a big old post that does her job, and she rebounds. We got a board. Last year, I think we gave up 15 rebounds a game every time we played them. O-boards. So, that's a lot of second chance opportunities. So, yeah, they're just a really nice team. They do a lot of nice ball screen action a lot, use their post a lot, and they break on you with the secondary. So I'm expecting the same type of game that we usually have with those guys. It's usually a pretty close game. There's been a couple blowouts one way or the other, but I'm sure hoping for a close game and one that sees us in the win column.
How much is the message to those vets right now that you have played a lot of good basketball for this program, and kind of restoring that confidence that is there?
Mm-hmm. It is. It's interesting because they're vets, but you have to remember who they were vets with. You have to remember when Sydney started in the lineup. So we consider Sydney a starter, and she was a vet, but it was basically the Big Ten tournament on. You have to remember Hannah was playing with 2 WNBA players. So their pressure is great because they're the vets. They're coming back. They're great. I was good. Well, they're learning different roles. They're the options of which they were on a team last year were 3 to 4, sometimes the 5th option. Now you're putting them in a situation where I'm trying to figure out the consistent option. So they're giving you everything they got, but and this has been the whole thing of the season. That's why you've seen a little inconsistency. It is just trying to get them in positions of which they can be successful, and then the old feelings of like, well, that worked back then. Well, there's a lot of reasons it worked back then, and I have to keep keep them trying to be true to who they are. And that's why I think it's so important that I tried to keep them in this season. And it's the next game and it's the next play because they're tight. They want to be that. What they were, not that team, but it was ease. And so now it's harder. So that's why they love it so much. They want to be so good, but it's just a different race. And so that's why you see the tightness, because I want to be that. I'm sorry, coach. And so when you're playing with a tightness, the shots are harder. The layups don't go in as well because you're playing with like so much want. And so I got to get them relaxed a little bit so they can lead and be relaxed and get the young kids just going. Because the young kids just go but I know I need that mix, and I got to keep getting the vets a little bit dropping their shoulders. But that's why I think sometimes we all, collectively folks forget, like, why isn't she playing the same? Well, it's not the same game, right? And so I think, though, with all that, every day I see we're getting a little bit closer, and I keep pushing buttons, and as the coach, I got to keep pushing the right buttons until we collectively start looking a little bit more confidently. But I do believe I'm getting close to the right buttons. I do believe that.
If I can get one more question in. You're talking about pushing the right buttons. I went through and compiled some stats, and as good as Addy O'Grady's been this year for you guys offensively, it hasn't necessarily translated to better team performance. Have you guys thought about what that potentially means? And you talk about Hannah Stolke trying to unlock her. Have you thought about moving her back to a position where she's more comfortable?
Oh yeah, I mean it's all on the table, and I've had different timelines of how long I'm going with different things, and so yeah, I mean I think that's definitely has always been a possibility. It was almost the way it was going to be to start. So yeah, all of that is definitely part of the the equation. And yeah, I've looked at all of that stuff, and but yeah, that's a big consideration, and being considered moving forward.
How much do you look at analytics, and how much of it is just eye test and gut?
Yeah, I'm a big gut person when it's clear. Like, okay, so like the last seasons, it's like I got a feel we're gonna run and it was for Kate, right? I could suggest that, you wouldn't run this into the game, I'm only running for Caitlin. But like different times, it's like, she's hot, we're gonna do this against Connecticut or whatever. Analytics might have told you something else. Now, we had our staff, we have all of that, right? Or your lineups that tell you. This year, I've studied them a lot more, and the analytics and, the plus minuses, sometimes in a game, not so much, like they can be pretty telling, but sometimes I feel like, that's a little off. But the lineups, I look at that a lot now because it's so even. I mean, it's really like, if you look at the stats of the middles, like the 2s and the 3s. I mean, it's like those analytics are like, they're like, it's crazy. I mean, it might be a 61, a 62, a plus 61, a plus 62, and a plus 59 of people you're thinking like, and so that's just what they are individually. And then you put that lineup, okay, this is the lineup, pull this numbers for me. And then it's just like 70, 67, right? So it's really been fascinating. So I'm probably this year 60-40 analytics, but there's a lot of gut. I'm probably a little bit more sometimes gut.